Okay, this is my title, Dalit, Theorisation and Epistemic Injustice. We are actually reinvestigating the debate on theory and experience. This theory and experience is a recent debate, particularly in contemporary Indian philosophy, particularly in social science. It's a debate between Sundar Sarukkai and Gopal. So this paper actually trying to read Gopal Guru's argument through the framework of Miranda Fricke's epistemic injustice. So this paper actually have three sections. In the first section, I will be recapitulating Guru's main argument presented in the bracket mirror. Then I will explain Miranda Fricke's framework of epistemic injustice. Then the third section, I will be analyzing Guru's argument through Fricke's epistemic injustice. So how we can better understand Guru's argument by Fricke's epistemological framework of epistemic injustice. This is what we are going to do here. Okay. So the central problem here is that Guru says that in Indian social science, it actually maintains a debate between theory and experience, but it always gives priority to theory, where experience is something which is actually considered as not possible to make theory, and it's considered something which is subordinate. Okay, so there are marginalized people like women, Dalits, and all. They have much experience. That experience can be used for understanding reality and all. That experience can be used for theoretical framework. But within the social science framework, this experience actually considered as something which is subordinate. Okay? So here in the context of Dalit theorization, Dalit knowledge confined to empirical experience. So they were always not this experience, they are world realities. It's not actually coming to the theoretical framework, but goes for the empirical social science. Okay? This is the problem. Okay, so now the question here is that how does so there's a problem, there's an epistemic problem here, there's an injustice there. So how does this epistemic injustice shape this marginalization of Dalit theories, what we are looking for? Now the central thesis here is that Indian social science systematically excludes or marginalizes Dalit theorization through structural mechanism. This is what Gopal is trying to do. So the key argument is that he says that there is an epistemic hierarchy, a disparity within the social science, where actually Dalits are always considered as carrying experience, thereby they are understood as data characters. Okay. Data characters, they are actually datas. Okay, they are not theorizers, but datas. Okay. Whereas the upper class scholars actually monopolize this theoretical framework, so, because they were considered, according to Guru, born with theoretical skills. So by this he is saying that upper class scholars have presumed that they are born with reflective capacity to do theoretical social science, whereas Dalit scholars, they are actually lacking this. So because of lacking reflective capacity, that they are not able to produce theoretical social science. So this is the argument what I am making. So hence this debate, theory and experience binary debate is there, where Dalit experience are treated as raw material, whereas upper class scholars are privileged theoreticians or interpreters. Now, this structural practice in Indian academia, particularly in social science, actually have been following consequences. First, there is underrepresentation of Dalit scholars or Dalit knowledge. Okay. Second, Dalit scholars' epistemic resources or epistemic standards are dismissed. Okay. Dalit scholars work are labeled as activist, or their theoretical framework are understood as emotional sort of thing rather than cognitive content. Okay. So this structural practice actually denies the theoretical legitimacy of Dalit scholars. So there's also, apart from that, there is citation politics and gatekeeping. Of course, there's non-Dalit control, publication, funding, and validation. These are the arguments by which he says that there is actually hierarchy within the social science practices, where the privileged one actually does privileged one actually follow theoretical social science, whereas the vast majority of Dalits and others forced to do empirical social science. This is the scenario he was actually trying to be practical. How now what we are trying to do is that how this scenario can be understood through Fricker's notion of epistemic injustice, what we are trying to do. So what is epistemic injustice? Fricker actually defines epistemic injustice is a wrong done to someone in their capacity as a node. So this is actually rooted in one, identity prejudice. Second, structural inequality. Then of course it involves what you call power asymmetries. So identity prejudice actually is a bias against one's social identity, whether it could be woman, whether it could be Dalits, any marginalized identity. So whenever they speak, we have a prejudice against them. So based on that prejudice, we actually judge their theoretical case. This is what actually why this identity prejudice is more important. Now, there are two types of injustice. One is testimonial injustice. Second one is hermeneutical injustice. Testimonial injustice, as I already mentioned, is actually when a speaker's credibility is unfairly reduced due to identity prejudice. That's all I already mentioned. This is what called testimonial injustice. So the mechanism of this testimonial injustice is that the listener, those who are listening, gives less credibility than deserved. Okay, this is what happened when this testimonial injustice is actually at work. I can give an example. This woman testimony, okay, gives less credibility in the patriarchal society because of a prejudice against them. Okay. Now, another sort of epistemic injustice is hermeneutic injustice. This is actually about a collective lack of a collective interpretive resource. It indicates lack of categories of concepts which lacks. So this actually, there are two types of epistemic practices are there. One is actually to make sense of something, we need certain categories, okay, certain resources. If it is lacking, then it's very difficult for someone who is having certain experience to explain it. Okay, that's one thing. Second one is about sharing. Suppose I have knowledge, I want to share. Suppose I have a prejudice against me, and I'm sharing, I'll be judged. So this is one, in a nutshell, what is testimonial injustice and what is hermeneutical injustice. Now, Guru actually describes Guru describes testimonial injustice in academia, that there is actually gives credibility deficient. That is because I often see that they are incapable of doing theoretical work, and their assumed bias due to their caste identity. And also, whenever they try to theorize, they were actually criticized by calling them. Their experience is too subjective, not objective at all. Okay. So hence, what Guru tries to say, there is an empirical theoretical divide exists within the social science practice, where the Dalits are forced to do empirical social science, or at the same time they become data to the upper caste scholars, so that upper caste scholars can theorize about Dalits. So, and apart from that, whenever Dalits were actually trying to do their theoretical assumptions, their entire knowledge actually being turned by oversimplifying that it is nothing but victim narration. So whenever they talk about untouchability, they will be treated, that narration will be treated as nothing but victim narrations. Okay? When by all this victim narration, what they are trying to do is that these are nothing but subjective narrations. So hence, these narrations are not qualified for a theoretical framework. So now we will see how Guru describes hermeneutical injustice in social science. So Guru is trying to say that there is a conceptual gap within the social science practice. The dominant framework cannot capture the experience. Let me give an example of untouchability. Now today we are understanding untouchability as something which is a sin and which is supposed to be understood as banned by law. But if you are looking at Indian traditions, untouchability often understood as a spiritually, desirable action. So it has the meaning of untouchability, that it is something ashamed of, came only quite recent, hardly 100 years. Before that, it was actually considered as something a morally spiritual practice supposed to do. Okay, this is how this new understanding is came. Why it is not came before is that there was a lack of categories happened there. Now with new category, we can actually we can actually theorize this experience of untouchability, by calling it is not a spiritual practice of desirable moral practice, but it's a practice of humiliation. This happened because we actually have new interpretive results we need to get to understand this. So there's an interpretive marginalization happening. So there's an inequality in the epistemic resources there. So with this, we can say that what Guru is actually trying to say is nothing but a hermeneutic injustice. Now, this hermeneutic and testimonial injustice can be complementary. They can function each other and help each other. So this cyclical relationship perpetuates epistemic marginalization and maintain caste hierarchies in knowledge production. So we can say that the hermeneutic injustice that it actually suggests lack of interpretive resource to name untouchability as a structural violence rather than religious practice. So in terms of the testimonial injustice, we can say there is a part of untouchability dismissed as exaggerated, biased. So Buddhist critique plus Fricke's framework can really be followed. First, epistemic structure, neural social structure, caste hierarchy reproduced in knowledge hierarchy, academic practice reinforce social inequalities, and what it shows actually a need for structural transformation beyond individual prejudice to institutional change, and requires rethink the knowledge validation criteria itself. So then what we are doing is nothing but reclaiming the Dalit epistemic agency itself. So it means that recognizing Dalits as legitimate knower rather than mere object of study. So by doing that, we are actually trying to use a centering Dalit theoretical contribution within the social science practice. And actually, by this, we are actually challenging the caste-biased epistemic authority within the social science practice. Hence, we could say that Bruce Krakenmiller provides a critical analysis of caste bias within the social science practices, and he gives an understanding of how Dalits are marginalized. So Fricke's framework actually offers conceptual tools to understand this as a systematic injustice, both ethical and as well as epistemic. So testimonial injustice explains the credibility deficit faced by the scholars, and whereas hermeneutic injustice explains conceptual gaps in understanding the experience. So what we are trying to say is that there must be a transformation which requires structural changes in academic institutions, recognition of Dalit epistemic agency, and development of inclusive interpretive resource. So with this, I must conclude. Thank you so much.
I must compliment you. You were very clear. You tried to explain it very clearly. So now it's open for questions, comments, discussion.
I have a question that do you think there can be biases even in the experiential understanding of Dalits?
Bias from the
Like you have framed the biases that has been created for the upper class people. That they experience in their daily life. But can there be bias even in the experiences of people who are
Okay. See, the problem is that these biases are two types.
yeah.
This first one is that suppose I have an experience and I have a theoretical framework.
Right.
Okay. Suppose I am capable of theorizing this knowledge. Okay, this experience. Okay. Your question is actually about that bias. So I have experience.
Like my question is, taking an absolutist stance on one side, whether it is theoretical or experiential, could be conflict.
Okay, I understand actually. Now what I'm trying to say is this bias actually, it's not about the bias within the theoretical framework.
Yeah.
The bias is about even though you are bringing a theoretical framework, which is actually within the theoretical framework is validated, still this is going to be dismissed. That is the bias we are talking about. Okay?
Understood. Questions?
So anybody else who has contributed to this debate,
One probably will be SS Pandian, and another probably will be the Ragesh. And there are others, I don't know their name, but these two I know. from Raghuram Raju, actually there was actually a critique against Guru, which is actually, for me, it's not convincing, because Guru actually tried to Dalits to do theory. Okay, so there is an argument from Guru actually, because Dalits are actually well excellent in poetry and literature. The resistance is there, but Guru's call is for doing theory. So what Raghuram Raju said is that Raghuram Raju thought like calling to doing theory probably is a call for giving up poetry. But actually Guru was not intended to do this abandoning literature for the sake of theory. But there was a misinterpretation from Raghuram Raju, I guess so. That's what I have my reading.
I think this debate is very fascinating.
Yeah.
Adding and contributing positively to the discourse.
Yes.
Very. Any other question?
When we talk about the transformation in the academic institutions, we talk about the recognition of the Dalit perspective. At the same time, do we discard the already privileged interpreters theory, or do we add the actual Dalit experiences? How do we find the balance over there?
Okay, my question would be, when a Dalit actually trying to theorize his experience, is it possible without critiquing the existing theoretical framework? Is it possible? Now, if that is the case, it is absolutely essential that it challenge the existing theoretical writing. Well, that shows actually the existing theoretical framework has limitation. They are incapable of producing marginalized knowledge. That's one thing. And second is that unless those who are experienced, if they are not given an opportunity to theorize, whatever theorization you are doing about the marginalization, it's itself a clear-cut bias is there. Take for instance a woman-man. The entire philosophy discourse. The knowledge about women actually were by and large produced by men. Whether it is Aristotle, whether it is Immanuel Kant, the concept of human nature, they were both produced. You can clearly see a masculine or male perspective of them. I can give best example from Aristotle. Aristotle actually gives a clear-cut definition of what human nature is, right? So, whenever he talks about politics, he was saying that only man can have the capacity to do politics. What is the reason? Because man is a rational animal. Okay. So, rationality is associated with human nature, right? So, when he is saying that man is capable of doing politics or is exercising his freedom, is actually excluding women and sex. He has a clear-cut reason for that. Why he is excluding women is that women are doing their instinctual part, reproduction and taking care of children, where there is a less possibility of rationality. Okay, so slaves as well, they are doing their body works, labor. There is no cognitive aspects. So actually, this inequality is happened. Clear-cut philosophical, conceptual framework is there. What is human nature? It's absolutely a biased one. You can clearly see in Aristotle this.
Just a small query. See, the academic structure and atmosphere here in India we have has a great influence of the West.
Yes.
It's not totally indigenous, we can't say that. So, have they reflected on this aspect also, and does it have any factor, does it have any influence?
Yes. I think
Or the other way around, have they reflected on the Western system now?
Okay. One way of looking at it is that it's actually in the 20th century there was an emergence of the identity politics emerged. Particularly, in world itself, there is variety of genders actually emerged. So that actually have in India may not be large sense, but in some sense actually affected. Okay. So in that sense, may not be gender perspective different. Identity politics was slightly some sort of upper hand. And that also, that is actually, that's one thing. And second is that there was actually a dissatisfaction within the existing Marxian framework, which are already always talk about us. So they have, within the theoretical framework, they have an innate inability to capture what is cost within that. So that failure shows a new theoretical framework is necessary to. Yeah, that's what my I will know.
So here you talked about you started theory and experience, and like entire presentation, it makes me so much like I'm not understanding entire presentation actually. It makes me so much like I needed to confuse state. But end of the presentation, I want to like this theory. I want to bifurcate into metaphysical and physical, because this metaphysical thing of the individual, I don't have any biased things. Like whatever the you are saying, biasedness and theories in bias, it's all related to empirical things of the world. Like empirical things means it's itself is what it's related to physical world.
I actually have to be able to comprehend that question. If anyone has understood that question,
He's saying that this like platonic binary of cognition and materiality, is it really required? That's
Yeah.
It's,
Like materialist.
like this binary of theory and non theory and material experience
yeah,
is
okay. So
because all the philosophers are not following the same.
okay,
Theories are related to I want to classify as two things. Like in metaphysical and physical. Physical means it's empirical. It's like materialistic things. Like whatever the biasedness is there in the privileged class theories that are that are affecting in a
Physical.
empirical world, like not in a metaphysical world. Like metaphysical theories don't have any
Implication.
any fixation things are not, it will be not there. Like already fixed things, the fixed theories will be not there. But these the amalgamation of metaphysical and physical things, like in the physical, in the empirical world, the biasedness, the hierarchy, and the position from privilege to lower, it will of course it will be there. Like it's a never-ending story. But the like I want to conclude because of your saying privileged theories and this like Dalit theories are there, right? So the amalgamation of metaphysics and the empirical biases, the both amalgamations making very confusion, and it is that amalgamation amalgamated theories as classified as a metaphysical theories. Like that's why like people are getting confusing, and it's not like not unable to separate.
okay. I don't know what to respond.
But he's talking more about a practical
theory.
problem that is existing in the world. He's not bringing the metaphysical element at all.
Yeah.
So the he is discussing the problem of the real world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like in the physical, that's what I'm saying. Like now you are also saying, ma'am, like physical. You are talking. He's talking about the physical world.
Impact.
But in Indian philosophy, the physical, the who are the upper class, like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra in this class, like the Brahman people, it is all related to metaphysical thing on the metaphysical thing. It's and soul nature, and it's like guna karma. It's metaphysical. Like guna is not a physical thing. It's a metaphysical thing.
I think somewhere you are confused.
By metaphysical thing, it is affecting in the empirical world.
Somewhere you have confused between Brahman and Brahman. I feel like.
Yeah. And I'm not confused. I'm not at all confused. I'm not at all confused. And clearly I'm saying.
Vijay, actually,
Can I?
I'll respond to you later. Okay, we'll have a talk later.
Maybe I can. I mean, I've understood where he's coming from.
Okay.
And I had a similar comment or something to say about it. But I think what he meant was for the social material construction of caste, there is a metaphysical underground, there is a theoretical foundation,
Okay.
metaphysical foundation for the rationale of caste system.
Okay.
That's where it's coming from. And then how do we, I didn't get where the question was going, but I think this is what he wanted to, and even I wanted to say something similar. Gopal Guru's earlier work, Humiliation, from 2009. In the introduction, he says that, similar to what he was trying to say, that the theory of karma is the underlying theory
Okay.
of the metaphysical theory of caste. So yeah, that,
Exactly.
but your question was slightly unclear. So I maybe
Yeah,
that's where
that's what I said. I'm already in confused state. That's what I want to say.
No, it's a good.
So my basic suggestion was that this observation, I mean, this needs to be taken. I mean, do you think that it needs to be considered? One.
Okay.
And more recently, there has been some theorization about it.